All right, nicely done. We're going to have Dave Cassel come up and join us, and Dave is the Executive Director of Carequality. And Dave has done, and all of Carequality, have done an amazing job in an extremely short time period in connecting multiple networks. Dave will correct me, but I want to say they have 22 networks live and a number of others in the pipeline. And so we finally have the ability for providers and other healthcare organizations to not only exchange within their networks, but to branch out, to reach out and exchange with those other 20 plus networks. So Dave Cassel, would you come up and give us some highlights on what the eHealth Exchange is going to mean or what Carequality is going to mean to the eHealth Exchange?
Absolutely, thanks Jay. And I think my microphone is on, so I don't necessarily have to stand behind the podium. And there we go, thanks. All right, so thanks everyone. My name is Dave Cassel. As Jay said, I am the Executive Director of Carequality. Happy to talk with you about what Carequality is all about, and then transition a little bit into what it means for the eHealth Exchange, as you will, in the coming months, have the ability to participate in Carequality via the eHealth Exchange Hub. And I'll turn it back over to Jay for some of those details. But first off, wanted to just give you a general sense of what the Carequality Framework is about. I know many of you have some familiarity, but probably not everyone. So we'll do a little bit of background here and then get into more of the specifics for the eHealth Exchange. All right, so if you look back 4 or 5 years, longer actually now, to when the first idea for Carequality came about, there were a number of us from around the industry who looked around and observed that there were a lot of different data sharing networks and programs and service platforms in health IT. And that was probably not really rocket science to come to that conclusion. But where we were perhaps a little bit innovative was recognizing that that was okay and that was expected. The same thing is observed in every other industry that we could think of, and there didn't seem to be any reason to expect that any one service platform, any one network hub, any one offering was going to be all things to all people at all times in health IT. So that what we would need instead was a solution for allowing those networks to continue to exist, to continue to provide value to their particular membership, which is often based on some community or other, whether that was a geographic community or a particular user community, a service subscriber community. One way or another, allowing them to provide that value to their community, but still connect their customers into a broader ecosystem of participants of all the other networks as well. And that is exactly what we set out to do with Carequality, was to create that web of interconnected communities through existing networks, including, now as we move forward, the eHealth Exchange and its very large and significant community that has developed around its offerings. So, how do we actually make this happen? And the details here are actually going to be pretty familiar to those of you who are accustomed to the eHealth Exchange. First and foremost, there needs to be a common set of rules of the road. We have a legal agreement called the Carequality Connected Agreement that is conceptually very similar in the role that it plays to the DIRSA, the eHealth Exchange's network agreement. The Carequality Connected Agreement allows the community to understand and trust that everyone else has signed the same terms, is bound by the same obligations, and they know what those obligations are. There's transparency in terms of what all the rules and who is playing by what rules given the role that they're in. That legal structure alone, while it is the foundation, is not sufficient to make the structure work. Obviously, you do have to also speak the same language or you're not going to be able to communicate. And so we do also have a mechanism for defining technical specifications. In the Carequality world, we do this via what we call implementation guides. And we have an implementation guide that is in widespread production use right now for what we call query-based document exchange, and we have a few others that are in stages of development around Carequality governance for FHIR-based exchange and Carequality governance for a network-to-network notifications infrastructure. And then finally, there are some operational elements. In general, Carequality, somewhat like the if you will, pre-hub eHealth exchange, does not have any centralized operational components, with a couple of exceptions. We do have a directory of all of the participants, and that's absolutely essential. In order to make this sort of very widespread ecosystem work, you need to understand who the other players are and how you can connect with them without specific pre-coordination with each of those individual players. And then not listed here on the slide, but also something that we do provide is a digital certificate that is used for security purposes to identify you as a valid participant. And again, if that sounds familiar to those of you who are eHealth Exchange participants, there's a reason for that. One of them being that we tried to learn some of the lessons from the eHealth Exchange and borrowed what we thought was very successful in the eHealth Exchange's initial implementations. Jay mentioned that there were, I think, 22 live implementers, as we call them, those participating networks. I actually will confess I have not counted recently, so I will take his word for it, but it's certainly in that neighborhood. We've had a number of organizations go live recently, and as he said, a number of others in the pipeline. On this graphic here, the organizations that are shown in white at the top are those that are live, along with their clients, and there are those that are in gray at the bottom are those who have signed that Carequality Connected agreement, but are still in the process of their implementations. You'll notice that there are some call-outs there that have a bullet list of organizations under them. Those are what we call service providers in the Carequality context, for lack of a better word. Organizations like Commonwealth, InsureScripts, and Know2 and Zen are Carequality implementers who also provide connectivity for organizations under them who might have been Carequality implementers in their own right, but instead have chosen to connect through those groups. So for example, Cerner and Meditech are not Carequality implementers, but they are Carequality connected through Commonwealth. And the same thing with Matrix Care via Know2, Advanced MD via SureScripts, and so forth. So that's what those call-out boxes mean there. Number that we're really proud of, we're proud of all of the numbers there in the center, but in particular that 80 million documents exchanged monthly is an exponential increase over what we had seen even just a year ago. I think we probably had 80 million documents total in 2018 that were exchanged, and now that's what we're seeing on a monthly basis, and that just continues to grow as the rollouts progress from these organizations. And we're really looking forward to the eHealth Exchange moving up out of the gray area down there into the white area at the top. So the implementers and their sort of sub-connections like Cerner and Meditech are certainly important, but they're obviously only part of the story. The real story is who is participating under them, who are the members of all of those networks. We do have a map that shows all the pins across the US. It's not particularly meaningful, it's just a blob of red. So I arbitrarily chose the DC metro area. When I'm speaking to those who are geographically oriented in some way, I pick their area. But here, I figured we're in the DC area, we might as well show DC. These are the pins in the map, if you will, the individual organizations, for the most part provider organizations, that are participating in Carequality are listed in the Carequality directory today. Even this does not necessarily capture all of the individual physician offices and individual hospitals that may be part of a larger entity, like Johns Hopkins, for example, or the University of Maryland, have one pin in the map. But it gives you a picture, I think, of the very widespread penetration of Carequality in the DC area. And really, if you go onto our website that's listed there at the bottom, the active site search, you can look in your area and see what the participation is there as well. So what's next for Carequality? We are working on a number of things. We're actually largely finished automating directory services. We have a Fire-based directory that is actually similar to a directory that the eHealth Exchange is working on as well. But we have ongoing efforts on document content, on expanding consumer access, the notifications in Fire that I had mentioned earlier, and some exciting new work that we're doing as well on image sharing. It was actually just earlier this week at the RSNA conference in Chicago, and had the opportunity to announce some early adopters of our proposed image sharing work and speak with the image sharing community there. If you are interested in participating in any of this ongoing work, we have a number of work groups that are active. I'd encourage you to contact that email address, admin@carequality.org. You do not have to be a member or have any formal relationship with Carequality in order to participate. Just let us know that you're interested in being part of the conversation. So I will turn it over to Jay to continue with what this means for the eHealth Exchange, and then we'll be happy to help field questions as we get to the end.
All right, thank you, Dave. Yeah, so again, this is super exciting. For many of the eHealth Exchange participants, you've already had access to Carequality, so it's kind of a non-event. But at the same time, many of the eHealth Exchange participants have not had access to Exchange outside of this network. So for the first time ever, they're going to, if they choose to, it's an they have the ability to connect or not connect. The coordinating committee felt very strongly about giving everyone that option. But for the first time ever, they're going to be able to exchange with different networks. So they're going to be able to exchange if they opt in with Commonwealth and with the entire Epic Care Everywhere network, not just those that are also in the eHealth Exchange, with Athena, eClinicalWorks, NextGen, NetSmart. I could go on and on. So this is big. This is really going to propel the volume of exchange for these participants. So like I said, now that the DRSA has been amended since voting concluded just on Saturday, a few days ago, the DRSA will go into effect on February 1st. And so that means that you're very fortunate that you're going to get to receive some additional emails from us, giving you information about connecting with Carequality, and most importantly, asking if you want to connect or not. I strongly encourage all eHealth Exchange participants to connect to Carequality. But if it doesn't make sense for whatever reason, or you've got to talk to your leadership or boards or whatever, you can opt in and opt out as frequently as you like, if you're kind of fickle about that kind of thing. So we're going to be sending out a communication that goes over a number of things. But this isn't something that's brand new. So the coordinating committee, again, who governs the eHealth Exchange network, actually decided to join Carequality in 2016. The challenge has been that we had to wait until we amended the DRSA before we were able to sign the Carequality paperwork. But that did happen, and we've gotten everything signed, and we're ready to move forward. So, if you do choose to connect to Carequality via the eHealth Exchange, again, we're going to ask everyone to opt out. So if we don't hear from you, we're going to assume that you want to connect via the eHealth Exchange. And of course, we'll send out multiple emails asking for an official decision. There is a fee if you want to exchange via the eHealth Exchange. So I forget precisely what it was, but I want to say it's between $3,000 and $12,000 a year, depending upon your organization size, and it's all out on our website. So we'll be sending out this information with the Carequality Connection terms, the terms that flow down that you would have to abide by, and you can get connected as early as February or later in the spring, if that makes more sense. So again, there are a number of networks that you would have the option of connecting with, and for no effort, because the hub is taking care of all of the connectivity, you could dramatically expand your reach. So with that, I think we'll take questions and hear concerns and all that good stuff. If you want to move up to the microphone.
Jay, Stephen Lane again,
Yeah.
Sutter Health. So that $3,000 to $12,000 fee to connect would presumably not apply to organizations that are already connected to Carequality by other means?
That's correct. So, take our Epic sites. The vast majority of them have already connected to Carequality, and they get that through Epic, and I think at no extra cost. All they probably need to do is say, hey, I'm going to opt out. I'm already connected to Carequality via Epic. Some of our Cerner sites have the option, and Meditech for that matter, have the option of joining via Commonwealth. But some of them, for whatever reason, have said, no, we're going to connect to Carequality via the eHealth Exchange and not via Commonwealth. So there are lots of options, but if you choose to not connect to Carequality via the eHealth Exchange, there's of course no fee and no action needed other than saying, I don't need to connect, I'm already connected. What other questions or concerns might we have?
Jay, Dan Paoletti from OHIP. Just to clarify what you said, we're automatically going to be in unless we tell you no, and then also do we have to be on the hub to be in? And then, so do we have to be on the hub, or are we automatically in and then will you just automatically bill us? How all will that work?
Yeah, great question, Dan. So correct. We're going to assume that all eHealth Exchange participants want to connect to Carequality unless they tell us otherwise. And we'll be, like to some of the sites, we'll be quite aggressive in saying, hey, you're already on Epic or Cerner. Do you want to opt out? But yes, connecting to the hub is how we make this happen. So connecting to the hub is required. And there are only a couple of eHealth Exchange participants who are not planning to connect to the hub. In particular, those are, I believe it's 2, maybe 3 children's hospitals who don't exchange for treatment. They only exchange with the SSA for Social Security determination benefits. And then we do have a couple of regional HIEs. I think we currently have 3 who are saying they're waiting for their board's approval to do this. But hopefully that answers your question.
So I have one more question. So all sounds great. My question is more for you. So when we're responding to a Carequality query back through the eHealth Exchange, we're a very large Epic state, large ECW state. What we respond currently in the eHealth is a consolidated CCDA architecture. So we take all the data and we merge it into one. It's got all the source information in it. But how will we respond back to you or to Carequality? Are they expecting us to exclude everything that might be on the Carequality network already, or?
No. So first of all, if you receive a request that comes from via the eHealth Exchange from Carequality, then that's the avenue with which you would respond.
Right.
And you would respond back with your standard CCDA. It doesn't need to be customized to include or exclude any additional information.
Okay. So people could potentially be getting duplicate data.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's worth noting that as one side effect of increasingly widespread interoperability is going to be that records more and more are in fact somewhat in sync with one another, and that's a good thing. So when you request records from multiple sources, there is going to be some amount of duplication, especially in some of the key elements like problem lists and medications lists and allergy lists. And again, that's a good thing. That means that the records are actually synchronized across the different places where the patient is receiving care. However, that does put a little bit of a burden on those who are responsible for user interfaces to do as best they can to present that to the users in an efficient way.
Yeah, I don't know how meaningful or usable this will be, but I am going to try to gather some anecdotal information regarding volume. So some of our HIEs, as an example, CRISP and Kanza and Manifest Medics and others are either live on Carequality as implementers or in the process. And I think it would be interesting if we could get some volume from them to say to identify how many queries they're receiving. Again, it's kind of apples to oranges. It doesn't mean that you're going to be receiving the same number of queries, but I know that volume has been a question from some of you. Arun.
Yeah, hi Jay. Yeah. So question, with many networks, again on the duplication question, and going back to the St. Mary's fictional hospital. So let's assume that's part of the eHealth Exchange now and it's also part of Carequality. Is some of the duplication handling done as part of your directory, or is that something that you expect us to handle as part of our technology?
Yeah, so the hub has some magic. You know, you've heard that before, but the hub does have some magic, where if there's a participant in the eHealth Exchange, so let's say that there's a Cerner shop on the eHealth Exchange health system, and they're also on Commonwealth, the hub will only ask them once for their information, so that will not be duplicated. But if you were to query for patient John Smith, and you were to ask, I'll make it up, you were to ask the Utah HIN, and you were to ask an Epic shop or whatever in Utah as well, and they both have info for that patient, then yes, you would probably receive duplicate information.
Hi, Jay.
Oh, hi.
Hi, this is Neelam from DoD.
Oh, hi, Neelam.
Question about the different ways of connecting to Carequality. So we could connect directly to Carequality or go through eHealth Exchange Hub or go through Commonwealth. Are there any advantages of doing it one way versus another? And
Yeah, great question. For most of our participants who do not already have connectivity with Carequality, it's cheaper and easier to go through the eHealth Exchange. For participants that are already live on Carequality and their EHR vendor provides it for free, that's cheaper and easier. If you're thinking about joining Carequality directly, I would recommend reaching out to administrator at carequality.org and scheduling a call with them, and then maybe asking some of the live implementers, how easy or how hard was it to connect directly to Carequality? It's my anecdotal belief that the actual connections are quite easy, but I think it's a question as to whether or not you want to maintain X number of additional point-to-point connections, because Carequality does not have a centralized platform that you would connect to. You would make one connection to eClinicalWorks and one to NextGen and one to Commonwealth and so on and so forth. Kevin.
Kevin Larson from CMS. So CMS is a payer, and so in some ways we're the odd one out here. I'm wondering if you can look into the future, and as CMS is putting out requirements for payers to be more and more part of the interoperability landscape, what's the business case or the role of payers connecting and participating in either eHealth Exchange or Carequality?
Yeah, great question. So, so if payers were sitting around with nothing to do and folks there wanted to pull information, maybe for medical necessity determinations, or maybe they're more into value-based care and they've got a nurse case manager in a cubicle who's trying to find all the diabetics who didn't pick up their insulin or haven't had their A1C taken recently. They could definitely benefit from the query and retrieve model. But I think the payers are also more interested in push and actually in population level exchange. And the population level exchange is something we're definitely not ready for. But we are, within the eHealth Exchange, are very interested in moving into the push world in 2020. And I know that the Carequality, I've read on the website, has put in a very thoughtful effort in thinking about how they might roll out push. And maybe I should let Dave be more authoritative on that.
Thanks, Jay. So really interesting question on the payer perspective. And as you look at the regulatory landscape, and we try to look into our crystal ball a little bit for information blocking, and sometimes it doesn't require a crystal ball. The early rule is out there. CMS's rule is out there. There is every expectation that payers will be expected to be included, not only that payers themselves will be expected to participate in interoperability efforts, but that others will be expected to cooperate with their participation, which there are both sides of that need to take place. But I think as we look forward based on the regulatory environment, we are expecting payers to be involved in query-based exchange. Now, there are some elements around minimum necessary and some other factors that may make FHIR-based exchange, which is a little more targeted, a little more granular, may make that desirable for payers. But I think there are a number of use cases that do make sense for document exchange as well. And from the Carequality standpoint, what we're actually working on, and if you have the opportunity to stay the whole week, which I know you may not, on Friday we have a session in the Carequality annual meeting that will be talking about this in more detail. But we do have a requirement that is currently proposed, being reviewed with our implementer community, that starts to make exchange with payers, and at least in supporting some additional permitted purposes, as we call them, more mandatory, if you will. It does not require that individual provider organizations necessarily, right out of the gate, honor queries from payers. But what it does require is that our implementers, which would include the eHealth Exchange, need to make it possible for their participants to honor queries for payment, for operations, for patient request as well. Not only payers, but consumer access is something we're looking at here. So we do see this as a really important item on the roadmap for a variety of reasons, not least Carequality's own compliance with information blocking rules. We want to make sure that everything is kosher there. And so, long-winded answer perhaps, but we definitely do see payer participation coming.
Ganesh.
Hi everyone, Ganesh Prasad from Memorial Healthcare System in South Florida. Both of you mentioned image exchange. Is it something that you're both working on independently, or are you collaborating on bringing image exchange to the network?
Yeah, we're definitely doing everything independently. Now, once the eHealth Exchange becomes a live production implementer, we'll be kind of a customer of Dave's, and he better treat us right. But yeah, but I am paying attention to the work that they're doing there. It's all using the XCAI framework, and Dave can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's using the XCA-I framework. And the idea is that it's not using JPEGs or any small files like that, but there's a link to full DICOM images. And of course, you would hope that the reader has an FDA-approved way to read those DICOM images. So we're not swapping that huge file. We're just providing a link so that the user can go grab that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Another question? So I'm not going to be here on Friday, so I have to ask now. So once, I appreciate your comments on the HIPAA minimum necessary. We've spent 2 years addressing that in Ohio, and I do agree that fire is probably a more appropriate way to respond to that kind of concept. One other thing, I just want one comment on the question. There's also the requirement that a patient can, if they pay in cash, can ask for the restriction of data to go to the health plan if they pay for the whole encounter. That's an issue that needs to be addressed, I think, through some new standards as far as payer classes, because right now EMRs do not have the ability to do that. So when their query is initiated, EMRs cannot restrict that. So that's just something that we need to talk through as well. But my question for you is actually, when the health plans the payers do get engaged in Carequality, is there going to be a requirement for them to respond to queries with data as well? Or are they only going to be accessing data?
It's a really interesting question. I think the Carequality Framework historically has envisioned there being a number of different incentive models, if you will. There is a misconception, I'll call it actually, that Carequality never permits fees to be charged to other implementers. That is not the case with respect to payers. So if you have a payer who is only requesting information, for example, it would make perfect economic sense for there to be some sort of fee arrangement there potentially. Another incentive model, which is one that we would certainly consider how best to put this into Carequality policy, would be to require that payers are in fact obligated to respond to queries as well with the information they have from a treatment standpoint if they wish to be included in the ecosystem from a requester standpoint. And that's a perfect example of the sorts of questions that are still out there for debate, and exactly how we should do that as a community. I would welcome any participation in those conversations from those who are interested.
Thank you.
I see another question.
Yes, Subodh Atal, I'm with the Social Security Administration. In one of the slides, you had a mention of working on consumer access, that Carequality is working on consumer access. Could you speak to that, expand on it a bit?
Yeah, we have actually from the very beginning of Carequality, or at least in the query-based document exchange paradigm, and we are translating that into the other work that we're doing as well, have always envisioned that consumer access should be supported in terms of being allowed by the Carequality rules. The actual participation by consumer applications and support by the other participants for honoring queries from consumer applications is a little bit of a mixed bag. There are some implementers who do accept queries from consumer applications and others who do not. This is one of the reasons why, as I mentioned, for the same as with payers, we're looking for ways that we can incentivize the acceptance of those queries, which is where we're starting with that implementer requirement. But as we look at our response to information blocking, as the rule is finalized, I do expect, I mean, we'll see, but I expect that we'll need to have a roadmap for consumer participation being mandatory from the standpoint of the other participants being able to respond to Carequality queries for consumer access purposes.
Dave, that brings up a question. When I look at the Carequality website and the list of active and onboarding implementers, I don't remember seeing any, with the possible exception of Wamba, that appeared to be consumer access apps. Would you expect that in the next year there will be some that onboard to Carequality as an implementer?
There actually are 3 that are live today, 2 as implementers in their own rights, and another that connects through Zen Healthcare.
Oh, great.
The number of organizations that are in a position today to respond to their queries is a little bit limited. As I said, there are some, but we're certainly expecting that to increase over the next 6 months. and we could certainly talk about this offline and not up here on stage, but I think the eHealth Exchange would have a potential role to play there in enabling some of these non-treatment purposes, including consumer access, for even for some of the organizations that may otherwise have access to Carequality. There may be some advantage in going through the eHealth Exchange
Sure.
to enable those other purposes.
Great. All right, does anyone have any additional questions or concerns about Carequality? All right, well, we have a great group. Thank you very much, Dave, for joining us.